Julian was 48 years old. For 22 of those years, he had built a life with his wife, Claire. He built it the way he built everything else, with patience, with precision, with an unwavering belief in the integrity of the materials. He had started his architectural firm with a loan from his father and a drafting table in a rented room. Now it occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise, a building whose steel and glass skeleton he had watched rise against the skyline. His life with Claire was meant to be the same, a structure designed to last, founded on shared history and quiet commitment. Then a single, unsolicited email from a bank he did not use arrived on a Tuesday morning, and the foundation of that 22-year structure revealed a fault line so deep it threatened to bring the entire edifice down. The email was a notification of a transfer of $784,000. Money he did not know they had, moved to an account he did not know she possessed. What Julian did next would cost Claire and the man she had partnered with absolutely everything. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from, and subscribe for more stories of quiet justice. The man sitting across from Julian's desk was named Marcus Thorne. He was Claire's lawyer. He was handsome in the way of men who use it as a tool, his suit a shade of blue so dark it was almost black, his watch a quiet statement of immense cost. His confidence filled the room, an invasive pressure against the clean lines of Julian's office. The office was a testament to Julian's philosophy, spare, functional, with a view that stretched from the city's heart to the distant, hazy line of the sea. Thorne had requested the meeting here, in Julian's space. A power play, a way of showing he could walk into the king's castle and make demands. He leaned forward, his voice a smooth, practiced murmur of concern. He spoke of Claire's deep unhappiness, of years of emotional neglect. He painted a picture of Julian as a man more married to his work than his wife, a man who provided a house but not a home. It was a compelling narrative. It was also a complete fabrication, an architectural rendering of a life that did not exist. Thorne slid a folder across the polished oak. A settlement offer. The number inside was an insult, designed to be. It was a figure calculated to make Julian feel small, to make him believe he was cornered, that his only option was a quick and humiliating surrender. Thorne sat back, the picture of magnanimous reason. "We have documentation, Julian," he said, the use of his first name a deliberate, condescending intimacy. "Evidence of assets you've been hiding. Offshore accounts. It would be messy. For your firm. For your reputation. This offer is a kindness. It allows you both to walk away with dignity." Julian did not look at the folder. He looked at Marcus Thorne. He noted the slight sheen of perspiration on the man's upper lip, the almost imperceptible tremor in the hand resting on the table. This was not confidence. It was the performance of confidence. A facade. And Julian knew everything about facades. He knew what they were designed to hide. He knew how to find the stress points. He knew what happened when they failed. Thorne was unaware of 2 critical facts. The first was the depth and precision of Julian's own documentation. The second was that Claire, his client and co-conspirator, was at that very moment sitting in a glass-walled conference room on the 14th floor, waiting. She believed she was there to sign routine incorporation papers. She had no idea she was waiting to be deposed. Julian's gaze drifted from Thorne's face to the small, black intercom button on his console. He let the silence stretch. He let the man's practiced confidence curdle into uncertainty. He had built this moment, just as he had built everything else in his life. Meticulously, quietly, and to last. Before the email, before the name Marcus Thorne had any meaning, Julian's life was a study in rhythm and repetition. His alarm sounded at 4:30 every morning. Not loud, not jarring, but a series of escalating chimes that brought him out of sleep gently. He would dress in the pre-dawn dark, the fabric of his work pants and cotton shirt familiar against his skin. By 5, he was in his truck, a domestic model, meticulously maintained, the cab clean of debris. He did not listen to the radio. He listened to the city waking up. The hum of street sweepers, the hiss of bus brakes, the distant clang of the first train. He often stopped at one of his active construction sites before heading to the office. He liked the stillness of a site at dawn. He would walk the perimeter, his boots leaving clean prints in the damp dust. He would run a hand over a newly poured concrete wall, feeling the cool, rough texture, the immense, sleeping strength within it. He saw the structure in its entirety, the finished building that existed only in his mind and on the blueprints, and he measured it against the raw, chaotic reality of its becoming. There was a deep satisfaction in this. The translation of an idea into a physical thing. Steel, glass, concrete, and human effort, all orchestrated into a form that would shelter people, that would stand against the weather, that would endure. His work was not about beauty for its own sake. It was about function, integrity, and permanence. He brought the same ethos home. The house he and Claire shared was one he had designed himself. It was not a showpiece. It was a machine for living. The light fell in predictable, pleasing ways throughout the day. The flow from room to room was logical. The materials were honest: wood, stone, glass. He had believed their marriage was built of the same stuff. 22 years. A son, now grown and in college. A shared history that felt as solid and foundational as the bedrock beneath their home. He remembered their early years, the struggle to launch the firm, Claire working as a teacher to keep them afloat. He remembered her belief in him, a belief that had felt like a load-bearing wall in the architecture of his own ambition. In recent years, a comfortable distance had settled between them. He mistook it for the easy quiet of a long-settled partnership. He saw her across the dinner table, attractive, poised, engaged in the community, and he felt a quiet pride. She was a part of the life he had built, a vital component. He did not see the hairline fractures. He did not notice when the quiet became silence. He did not register that her life had begun to run on a set of blueprints he had never seen. He was a man who could spot a flaw in a structural steel weld from 20 yards away, but he had failed to see the rod in his own house. His discipline, his focus, the very qualities that made him a brilliant architect, had created a blind spot. He looked at the world through a lens of logic and integrity, assuming others did the same. He assumed a promise was a promise, that a foundation, once laid, was secure. This was his great, catastrophic error of judgment. The world was not built to his specifications. The discovery came on a Tuesday in late October. The air outside held the first real chill of autumn, and the light slanting through his office window was thin and pale. He was reviewing a cost analysis for a new civic center project, his mind deep in the granular detail of tonnage and labor hours. An email notification appeared at the corner of his screen. The sender was unfamiliar, a large national bank he had no relationship with. The subject line was stark: notification of wire transfer. He nearly deleted it, assuming it was phishing. But something in the formality of the address, the lack of sensationalism, made him pause. He opened it. The email was concise. It confirmed a successful wire transfer in the amount of $784,000 from a savings account ending in 44B7, registered to Claire Marie Jensen, his wife's maiden name combined with her married one. The recipient was a numbered company. Julian stared at the screen. The numbers seemed to float, detached from meaning. $784,000. It was a sum of breathtaking specificity. He felt nothing at first, just a profound sense of cognitive dissonance. It was an error, a mistake, a sophisticated scam. He toggled back to his work, but the numbers remained, imprinted on his vision. He could not focus. The cost analysis felt trivial, a child's game. He opened a new browser window. He logged into their joint accounts. Everything was in order. The balances were what he expected them to be. There was no record of such a transaction. There was no account ending in 44B7. This confirmed his initial thought. It was a mistake. A fraud. A wave of relief washed over him, so potent it left him lightheaded. But it was followed by a cold, nagging question. Why use Claire's name? Why this specific amount? He went back to the email. He examined the header, the routing information. It was authentic. The email had originated from the bank's secure servers. This was not a phishing attempt. This was a real notification. The problem was not with the email. The problem was with his own knowledge. An inventory began to form in his mind. What he knew, their shared assets, their income, their expenditures. What he did not know, where $784,000 could have come from, and where it had gone. He felt a cold dread begin to pool in his stomach. He thought about Claire's inheritance from her mother, years ago. It hadn't been a large sum, but perhaps it had been invested. Perhaps it had grown. But she had always said it was gone, spent on renovations and a trip to Italy. Had she lied? The question was an unfamiliar and ugly thing. He started digging. He used a search engine to look up the bank. He found a login portal for private wealth management. On a hunch, he entered Claire's email address. Then he clicked Forgot Password. A message appeared. A password reset link has been sent to the email address on file. He checked their shared email. Nothing. Of course not. It would be a separate account. He sat back in his chair. The view from his window, usually a source of calm satisfaction, now seemed vast and indifferent. The city was a complex machine, full of hidden currents and secret transactions. He had believed his own small part of that machine was transparent, known. He was wrong. The feeling was not one of rage. It was the sickening, hollow feeling of a surveyor discovering a void beneath a foundation. The entire structure was compromised. Everything he had built his life on was now in question. He closed his laptop. He stood up and walked to the window, placing his hands on the cool glass. He looked down at the traffic flowing 28 stories below, a river of anonymous purpose. He felt utterly, terrifyingly alone. That evening, the performance of normalcy was breathtaking. Julian walked through the front door of his house, and the familiar scent of roasting chicken and garlic met him. Claire was in the kitchen, a glass of white wine on the counter, music playing softly from a small speaker. She turned and smiled, a bright, effortless smile that did not reach her eyes. He had never noticed that before, the disconnect between her mouth and her eyes. Now it was as clear as a crack in a pane of glass. "Hi, honey," she said. "Rough day." He looked at her, at the woman he had known for more than half his life. He tried to see the person who could orchestrate a secret transfer of nearly $800,000. He could not. He saw only Claire. "The usual," he said, his voice even. He took off his coat and hung it in the closet. The simple, domestic act felt fraudulent. He was an imposter in his own home. They ate dinner at the large oak table in the dining room. She talked about her day, a charity committee meeting, a difficult volunteer, lunch with a friend he had never met. He listened, nodding. Each word was a piece of a carefully constructed reality, a facade designed to distract from the truth. He felt a strange sense of detachment, as if he were watching a film of his own life. The man sitting at the table, eating chicken, looked like him. But inside, a silent, frantic calculation was taking place. The architect in him was assessing the damage, trying to understand the extent of the structural failure. How long had this been happening? Who else was involved? What was the purpose of the transfer? Was she leaving him? Was this a prelude to a divorce filing where she would claim he had been the one hiding money? The thought landed with cold precision. It was a clean, logical, and devastatingly cruel plan. He looked at her face, animated as she described a disagreement over floral arrangements for a fundraising gala. She was a good performer. Composed. Convincing. The confidence she projected was real. It was the confidence of someone who believes they have outsmarted their opponent. She had mistaken his quiet nature for passivity, his consistency for a lack of imagination, his trust for blindness. This was the foundational error of her design. After dinner, while she was on the phone in the other room, her voice a low, happy murmur, he went into his home office. He sat in the dark, the faint glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds. He did not turn on a light. He took a single sheet of paper from the printer and a pen from his desk drawer. At the top, he wrote two headings, known and unknown. Under known, he wrote, $784,00000. Secret bank account. Claire M. Jensen. Transfer to numbered corporation. Under unknown, he wrote, source of funds? Purpose of transfer? Co-conspirators? Timeline. The list of what he did not know was terrifyingly long. He felt a pressure behind his sternum, a physical weight of betrayal. It was not the wild, hot fury of a sudden argument. It was a cold, heavy grief. The grief of a builder who has just condemned his own creation. He folded the paper and put it in his wallet. He would not act tonight. He would not confront her. An emotional reaction was a waste of energy. It would give her information. It would reveal his position. He would do what he always did when faced with a complex structural problem. He would gather more data. He would be methodical. He would be patient. And he would be unforgiving. The next morning, Julian's alarm went off at 4:30, as always. He went through his morning rituals with the same deliberate pace. The shower, the shave, the dressing in the dark. But today, the familiar rhythm was overlaid with a new and urgent purpose. When he got into his truck, he did not drive toward the city. He drove to a small, all-night diner on the industrial edge of town, a place of cracked vinyl booths and thick ceramic mugs. At 5:15, he made his first call. His sister's phone rang twice before she picked up. Lena's voice was thick with sleep. "Julian, I need you," he said. There was no preamble, no small talk. He did not have the capacity for it. On the other end of the line, there was a brief silence, the sound of her sitting up in bed. Then, simply, "Where?" "The old diner. Off the interstate. I'll be there in 30, she said, and the line went dead. Lena was a forensic accountant. She moved through the world of numbers the way Julian moved through the world of blueprints. She saw patterns where others saw chaos. She was 2 years younger than him, fiercely loyal, and possessed a mind that was both brilliant and ruthless when it came to uncovering deception. She arrived in 25 minutes, her hair pulled back, wearing a sweatshirt and jeans. She slid into the booth opposite him and took the mug of coffee the waitress placed in front of her. She did not ask if he was okay. She did not ask what was wrong. She waited. Julian took the folded piece of paper from his wallet and slid it across the table. She opened it, her eyes scanning the 2 columns. She read it once, then twice. Her expression did not change, but he saw a hardening in her jaw. "Okay," she said, her voice low. "The numbered corporation. That's the key." She took a small notebook and a pen from her purse. "Give me everything. The bank name. The exact time of the email," he told her. He recited the details with an architect's precision, the numbers and codes and timestamps locked in his memory. She wrote it all down without comment. When he was finished, she looked up at him. "What are you going to do?" "About Claire, I'm going to work," he said. "I'm going to go home. I'm going to act as if I know nothing." "Not until I have everything," Lena nodded. It was the answer she expected. It was the way they were built. Not to react, but to prepare. "I'll make some calls," she said. "I have friends in data security. They owe me favors. We'll find the incorporation records for that company. We'll find who's behind it." She took a sip of her coffee. "This is big, Julian. This is planned. Whoever she's working with, they're not an amateur, I know," he said. His second call was at 9 a.m. from the quiet of his office. He called Anya Sharma. She was a lawyer, but that was like saying a hawk is a bird. She specialized in high-stakes financial litigation and corporate malfeasance. Her reputation was one of surgical precision and a complete intolerance for theatrics. Her firm's offices were in a different building, a tower of dark glass that seemed to absorb the light around it. He had met her once at a city planning gala. He had been impressed by the economy of her speech, the directness of her gaze. Anya's assistant told him she was booked for weeks. "Tell her it's Julian Croft," he said. "Tell her it's about a structural failure." It was a code he hoped she would understand. 2 minutes later, Anya herself was on the line. "My office. 3 o'clock, she said. The call lasted less than 10 seconds. That afternoon, he sat in her office, which was as spare and functional as his own. He did not speak of betrayal or heartbreak. He laid out the facts as he knew them, the sequence of events, the data points. He gave her a copy of the email, the account information, the name of the numbered corporation. Anya listened, her steepled fingers resting against her lips. She was a small woman, but she commanded the space around her with an unnerving stillness. When he was finished, she looked at the documents, then back at him. "They're going to accuse you of what they've done," she said. It was not a question. "They'll say you're the one hiding assets. They'll use it as leverage for a predatory settlement in the divorce." "Yes," Julian said. "That's the architecture of it." Anya's eyes glinted with something that looked like appreciation. "Your wife? Does she know that you know?" "No," he said. "Good," Anya said. "Keep it that way. Let them walk deeper into their own trap. My team will start a workup on this corporation and the receiving account. We'll be quiet. We'll be thorough. You go home. You go to work. You be the man your wife thinks you are. Predictable. Steady. Oblivious. Let her believe her plan is working perfectly." For the next 2 weeks, Julian lived inside the hollow shell of his life. He went to the office. He reviewed plans. He walked construction sites. He came home. He ate dinner with Claire. He listened to her stories. He felt the weight of every unspoken word, every shared glance that was now a lie. He was an architect inspecting a building he knew was slated for demolition, noting every detail before the wrecking ball arrived. The pieces began to fall into place with unnerving speed. Lena, using her network of back-channel contacts, was the first to strike gold. The numbered corporation, 341 Holdings LLC, was registered in a state known for its corporate privacy laws. But privacy was not invisibility. Lena's contact peeled back the layers of anonymity. The registered agent was a boilerplate service. But the signatory on the incorporation documents, the individual who had filed the paperwork, was a paralegal at a prominent downtown law firm, Thorne, Wallace & Creech. The name Thorne resonated with a dull, sickening clang. Claire had mentioned it. A few months ago, she had talked about joining a new charity board. A man named Marcus Thorne was the chair. She had described him as brilliant, dynamic, a real force for good. The connection was no longer a theory. It was a fact. Anya Sharma's team, working through official legal channels, confirmed it from another angle. They subpoenaed the bank for the full records of the secret account. The statements showed a pattern. Small, regular deposits over the past 18 months, consistent with Claire diverting funds from their joint accounts in ways that wouldn't trigger alerts. But the bulk of the money, over $500,000, had been deposited in a single lump sum 6 months prior. It was the payout from a stock portfolio Julian had set up for her years ago, one he had assumed was still slowly growing. She had liquidated it without his knowledge. The final piece of the puzzle was the property. The $784,000 transferred to 341 Holdings LLC had been used as the down payment on a condominium. Not just any condominium. A penthouse unit in a new luxury tower on the waterfront. A building Julian's firm had bid on and lost 2 years ago. Anya's team pulled the purchase agreement. The buyer was 341 Holdings LLC. The contact listed on the agreement, the individual with whom the real estate agents had been corresponding, was Marcus Thorne. The trap was not just financial. It was personal. They had used his money to buy a property in a building that represented one of his few professional failures. It was a monument to their contempt for him. The cruelty of it was architectural in its precision. One evening, Julian sat with Anya and Lena in a conference room at Anya's firm. The table was covered in documents. Bank statements, incorporation records, property deeds, email correspondence subpoenaed from the real estate agency. It was a mountain of irrefutable fact. The plan is clear, Anya said, her voice calm and cold. Claire establishes a narrative of a loveless marriage. Thorne, acting as both her lover and her lawyer, helps her siphon assets. They build a war chest. Then they file for divorce, claiming you're the one with secrets. They'll use the threat of a public, reputation-destroying lawsuit to force you into a quick settlement that lets them keep the money and the condo. They think you'll fold to protect your business. Lena tapped a finger on Marcus Thorne's signature. He's arrogant. He got sloppy, using his firm's paralegal, putting his name on the real estate forms. He doesn't think you have the resources or the will to look this deep. Julian looked at the evidence. He felt a profound sense of cold. The woman he had spent 22 years with had conspired with this man to systematically dismantle his life, not just for the money, but with a degree of personal malice that was hard to comprehend. What happens now, he asked. Anya looked at him. Now, they make their move. And we let them. 2 days later, the email arrived. It was from Marcus Thorne, a formal, chillingly polite letter of representation. It informed Julian that Claire had retained his services and was filing for dissolution of the marriage. It cited irreconcilable differences, and it requested a face-to-face meeting at Julian's office to discuss the terms of an amicable separation. The arrogance was stunning. He wanted to walk into Julian's own space and dictate the terms of his surrender. He's coming to you, Lena said over the phone. He wants to see you in your environment. Diminished, I know, Julian said. Let him come. He replied to the email, his response a single sentence agreeing to the time and place. Then he made another call. To his assistant. He told her to book conference room 14B for the day of Thorne's visit. And then he called Claire. His voice was steady, betraying nothing. Claire, he said, I need a favor. The accountants need a signature on some papers for the holding company that owns the office space. It's a routine tax thing. Could you come by the building on Thursday? Around 2. There was a pause. He could hear the faint sound of her calculating. Sure, she said, her voice casual. I can do that. Great, he said. Just check in at the front desk. They'll have a pass for you. Go up to conference room 14B. Someone will meet you there. He hung up. The trap was set. The players were moving into their designated positions. All that was left was to wait for the performance to begin. The day of the meeting, The city was draped in a cold, persistent rain. Water streaked down the vast windows of Julian's office, distorting the view, making the world outside seem liquid and unstable. Inside, the air was still and quiet. Julian had arrived at his usual time, but he did not work. He sat at his desk, the polished oak surface cleared of everything except his laptop, a single file folder, and the telephone console. He was a man waiting for a demolition. He had spent the morning in a state of heightened sensory awareness. He noticed the hum of the building's HVAC system, the soft click of his assistant's keyboard in the outer office, the precise angle of the light falling across the floor. These were the details of a world that was about to be irrevocably changed. At 1:30, his sister Lena sent him a text message. It contained a single image, a screenshot from the security feed in the lobby of his building. It showed Claire at the reception desk, smiling at the guard, a visitor's pass being slid toward her. The caption read, "The asset is in place." At 1:45, Anya Sharma called. "We're with her in 14B. She thinks we're the accountants. She's getting impatient. The stage is yours, Julian." He thanked her and disconnected. He looked at the closed door of his office. He felt his heart rate, a steady, slow drum. This was not nervousness. It was readiness. At precisely 2 o'clock, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Croft, Mr. Thorne is here to see you. Send him in," Julian said. Marcus Thorne entered the room, shaking rain from his expensive overcoat. He was the image of sleek, predatory confidence. He smiled, a flash of white teeth. "Julian, thanks for seeing me." He took the seat opposite the desk without being invited. He placed a leather briefcase on the floor beside him. He looked around the office, his gaze lingering on a framed award for a library project Julian had won years ago. It was a look of dismissive appraisal, the look of a man who was already calculating the liquidation value of another's life. "Let's not waste each other's time," Thorne began, leaning forward. His voice was smooth, rehearsed. He launched into his monologue. It was the same narrative he had previewed before, but now delivered with the force of an official declaration. He spoke of Claire's pain, her years of quiet desperation. He used words like emotional abandonment and financial opacity. It was a masterful performance of righteous indignation. Julian did not interrupt. He let the man talk. He watched him, studying him as if he were a new and complex material. He noted the way Thorne used his hands, the way he modulated his voice for effect. The man was an actor, and this was his opening night. He clearly believed he was playing to a captive and defeated audience. Finally, Thorne reached the climax of his speech. He slid a folder across the desk. It was the same folder from before, containing the same insulting offer. "This is our initial offer," Thorne said, his voice dropping to a confidential, almost sympathetic tone. "It's generous, under the circumstances. We have, as I mentioned, uncovered significant financial irregularities in your personal and business accounts. Accounts you failed to disclose to Claire. It would be a shame for that information to become public. It could be very damaging to your firm's reputation. A scandal of that nature. Well, clients get nervous." He sat back, his work done. The threat was delivered, wrapped in the language of concern. He had laid his cards on the table, confident he held the winning hand. Julian looked at the man. He looked at the folder. Then he looked at his own, single-file folder, sitting beside his laptop. The silence in the room deepened. The only sound was the rain against the glass. "No," Julian said. The word was quiet. It was not angry. It was not defiant. It was a simple statement of fact, a foundation that would not move. Thorne's smile faltered. "I don't think you understand the position you're in." "I understand it perfectly," Julian said. And he reached for his folder. Julian opened his file. He did not rush. His movements were economical, precise. The first document he slid across the polished expanse of the desk was a single sheet of paper. It was a bank statement. At the top was the logo of the national bank Thorne had used. Halfway down the page, a single line item was highlighted in yellow. A wire transfer. Outgoing. For the amount of $784,000,000. Thorne glanced at it, his expression one of mild annoyance. He was prepared for this. Claire was moving her own money, he said, his voice dismissive. Money you had no claim to. Money she had from her family. It was the prepared lie, delivered smoothly. He was still on script. Julian said nothing. He placed a second document on the table, next to the first. It was a set of statements for a savings account. The account number was 44B7. The name on the account was Claire M. Jensen. The statements detailed 18 months of deposits, culminating in the liquidation of a stock portfolio. Thorne's professional composure remained, but a subtle shift occurred. The easy confidence in his posture tightened. He was no longer leaning back. He was perched on the edge of his chair. "This is privileged financial information," he said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "How you obtained this is a serious breach." Julian ignored him. He laid down the third document. It was a copy of the Articles of Incorporation for a company named 341 Holdings, LLC. It listed a registered agent and a business address. Stapled to it was a printout of a digital filing receipt. At the bottom of the receipt, in the field for filing agent, was the name of a paralegal, and next to it, the name of her employer, the law firm of Thorne, Wallace & Creech. The air in the room grew thick and heavy. Thorne stared at his own firm's name. The blood drained from his face, leaving behind a sickly, gray pallor. His performance was over. The script was useless. He was in an unmapped territory, and he was lost. He looked up at Julian, his eyes narrowed. "What is this? What are you trying to imply?" "I'm not implying anything," Julian said, his voice still quiet, still measured. "I'm stating facts. These are records. They tell a story." He placed the final document on the table. It was the purchase agreement for the penthouse condominium. It showed the buyer as 341 Holdings, LLC. It showed the purchase price. It showed the source of the down payment, linking back to the wire transfer from Claire's secret account. And on the signature page, as the authorized representative for the buyer, was the crisp, arrogant signature of Marcus Thorne. Thorne looked at his own signature as if it were a snake. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He had walked into the room believing he was the architect of Julian's destruction. He now understood that he was just a component in a structure he had not designed and did not comprehend. The silence stretched, broken only by the sound of the rain. Julian had watched buildings get demolished. There was always a moment of profound silence after the charges were detonated, a split second before the structure began to fail. This was that moment. Thorne's entire case, his entire strategy, was collapsing inward. Thorne recovered, but his composure was a hastily erected scaffold, flimsy and transparent. He fell back on the last refuge of the cornered. He tried to sacrifice his partner. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, his voice now strained, losing its smooth timbre. "Claire," she was overwhelmed. She wasn't thinking clearly. She came to me for advice, and perhaps I was overzealous in trying to protect her interests. She felt you were hiding things from her, so she tried to secure her own future. It was an act of fear, not malice. He was attempting to reframe the narrative, to paint Claire as a frightened, confused woman and himself as a misguided white knight. He was building a new, weaker facade in the ruins of the old one. He looked at Julian, trying to generate a sense of masculine complicity. "Look, you're a reasonable man. She's still your wife. You don't want to drag her through a public, humiliating legal battle. It would destroy her. We can make this right. We can undo this. We can return the money. We can make this all go away quietly." He leaned forward again, trying to reclaim the confidential tone from before, but it came out as a desperate rasp. "You pursue this, and it will be brutal. For her. Think about your wife, Julian. Think about what this will do to her." The threat was his last arrow, and it was a weak one. He was trying to use Julian's decency, the very quality he and Claire had mistaken for weakness, as a shield for them